300 communities and over 30,000 people were moved between 1954 and 1975 as a consequence of the Newfoundland and Labrador government's resettlement program. In 2022, I visited Isle of Valen, a stone's throw from St. Leonard's in Mirasheen. During my visit, I had the pleasure of speaking with Barb Leonard. She lived through resettlement at the age of 6 years old. Barb relates the family impacts of resettlement.
Barb Leonard, came from here. We moved out of here in resettlement in 1967. And I was very fortunate in that my dad continued to fish here. And so every summer we returned and spent our summers here when I was growing up. So we had all of this beautiful island as our playground as a child. And I continued to come, and since my husband and I have retired, we spend 100 plus days here a year. It had to have been a devastating time. I was only 6 years old, right. So from my perspective, from a child's perspective, it was just frightening to know that you were going to have to relocate. But it must have been a heart-wrenching decision for my parents. Yeah. I think from my mother's point of view, resettlement was probably a good thing. Her children were going to get an education without having to leave home, because if you wanted to do beyond grade 10, of course, you had to leave and go to live with a relative in a larger center to finish school. So she knew that by being, in a growth center, that we'd get better access to education. And also for a mother, health care would have been another concern. Not that the father is not concerned about health care, but I mean, he's concerned with livelihood. And I'm sure there was a lot of discussions, probably arguments between husbands and wives, because the men knew this is where they knew how to provide for their family. And for the women, they knew that there was electricity, there were more modern conveniences, there was more safety and more opportunity for the children.
Yeah.
So.
I never thought of it that way, but I'm sure it was there was a real difference of opinion, because the men, were capable and
could provide. And then for them it had to be very scary, because it's, what if I cannot continue to provide for my family when I move on? What if the jobs aren't there that they promise are there?
That's right.
So my dad opted to continue to come back here and do what he knew how to do best, and had a very good life. I mean, it was hard in the sense that he was gone from Monday morning till Saturday evening. Most of the time he would return to Placentia for the weekend, and then we'd say goodbye to him again on Monday morning, and that was the way we grew up.
So you grew up that's where you moved
we
to
moved
Placentia.
To Placentia, yes.
Okay.
But, that's, I often think about that's a Newfoundland way anyway, even to this day, isn't it? I mean, the dads go offshore, or they head to Alberta, or, so it was, it's not something that was new, and it's not something that only happened at that time. It still continues. everything to be done. And then after resettlement, I think of my grandparents just sitting in 2 rocking chairs, in a little house in Placentia. And it must have been so hard to have gone from being active and vibrant members of the community
Yes.
to have to just be there and be idle. And it caused them to grow old, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, I bet, yeah.
It had to be so hard. And a lot of the older people always said they couldn't come back. It would tear the heart out of them to come back. Yeah.
In 1970, Al Pittman wrote about Placentia Bay resettlement. Al was born in St. Leonard's. His father was born in Mirasheen. He wrote of Skipper George Wilson. Skipper George Wilson, white-haired, as tall and dignified as a church spire, skin the texture of rawhide. He would go too, leaving his wife's grave to the delinquent sheep, leaving all he would have passed on to his sons, to the wind and rain and the sea. Would go leaving everything but his memory in his old man's heart. But he would go.